Welcome to The Color Code. My name is Cullen Kelly. I am a colorist. I am an image scientist. I am an educator. And as of starting this podcast, I am a professional extractor of colorist secrets. And there is no one whose secrets I want to know more than my guest today. Maxine Gervais has one of the best resumes in our business, with credits including Jonah Hex, The Book of Eli, American Sniper, Red Riding Hood, and The Continental, just to name a few favorites. We had an awesome conversation about Maxine's deep roots in this business, how she thinks about her craft as a colorist, and how she's tackled the many unique creative challenges that she's been faced with over the course of her long and successful career. Without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Maxine Gervais. Hi, Maxine.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. And you?
I'm good. Thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're another guest who we've basically, because of doing the podcast, I've had the excuse to actually get to meet you in person because we've never gotten to meet in person.
That's correct. Yes.
So it's nice to meet in person.
Well, post-COVID, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's been like we were just chatting a minute ago, but I feel like this has been the year of getting to meet in person people who I've known either, from Zoom meetings or just because of our colorist community, I guess, gets pretty small the longer we stay in it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe COVID also, people were so isolated. It brought people to want to connect a bit more.
Yeah.
And, I'm saying during that time via Zoom,
yeah.
But then it kind of triggered that interest that now you can pursue in person.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, I felt maybe there wasn't as much.
Yeah.
But COVID was a good excuse to get people out of their cave.
Yeah, indeed. And it's good for us to get out of the cave, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm glad to be out of the cave with you today. I'm really excited to have this conversation. You are you're like a superstar of color grading. You've been working at such a high level for so long. I'd love to get a sense for I don't really know your career story. How did you get your start? How did you find your way into color grading?
Oh, I feel like I've told that story so many times, but basically I did fine arts in my little town in Quebec City. And then I really tried to live of my art. So, it's fine arts you can do at the beginning, the first year, let's say photography and then painting and sculpture, and then you kind of explore. And then for your final year, you pick your medium. And although I really like photography and I really like painting, and I was, I actually really love sculpture. So that's what I focused on. And when I finished, I got a gallery wanted me to do some sculpture for them. And, it's a weird thing, right? Because it's not the era of Picasso or whatever. So you do it, but you don't get paid until certain amount gets, it was very complicated and you have to wait for the red dot and you're very nervous and it's a lot of work and a lot of material. So, I was I don't know if I want to do that. It's a different kind of era. I don't think you can live of your art the same way maybe in the past. I didn't want to teach. So somebody was oh, you should animate your sculpture. You should do robotics. And then as I was looking for robotics, I found this postgraduate, sorry for the accent, school that was giving classes in computer animation and 2D animation and all these things for television and cinema. So I went to do that for a year and a half, and I've learned mostly all the Autodesk tools, so I became Flame, Inferno, those kind of things. And then 3D Studio Max, do you remember that?
Course,
I don't know if people still use it, but back in the day was big, So I kind of learned all my ropes around those software. And when I was done, somebody mentioned, hey, there's this company, Discrete, they've been hiring, you should try, because, I sent my resume everywhere, but, you have no experience. Oh, actually, I forgot. I did have a little demo that I sent to Disney in California, and they did reach out. And I will always remember my English was not very good, and they had asked me for a breakdown. And I was asking everybody, what is a breakdown? A breakdown of the demo that I had sent them, which was an underwater scene. Spent a lot of time with the texture of the fish and the lighting and everything. And I didn't know what a breakdown was. So I finally, somebody says, oh, you have to tell them step by step how you did everything, how you mapped the texture, how you did all that. So So we had like the preliminary, like I sent them a breakdown. Then we had an interview, and then they asked me things for visa, like basically they were pursuing if like I could come there on my own or if they would have to do a visa or things like that. And then I was so junior, and so I didn't pass the third interview. So I mean, after the third interview, they were like, unfortunately, we cannot support your visa, but maybe in a few years. So anyway, so I sent it. I was like, well, if Disney like reach out to me, so I sent it everywhere. I was not getting anything, and then I tried with Discreet, and I got in. And then they put me in like technical support at the beginning. My position for combustion.
I forgot about combustion.
Combustion, yes, which was their new baby. It was like their little like because it was kind of getting off the Flame Inferno and getting into something a little bit more accessible for everybody, for all the software company. It was kind of the direction, instead of having your big Onyx box and all that, so you could just have a PC. So they were trying to be competing with other software like that. And so I did that for a few years, and then after that they acquired what was called SAC, which became Luster. They bought it from the Hungarian guys, and then they put me on that, and then I became not just technical support, but also training. So I would go and travel and not only install the whole thing and do the LUT mapping in the sand, but also explain the software. So like it was like all in one. You got me to go to India, I would be there and be able to support everything and teach you how to use the software. And so kind of that was the beginning. And then people got to know me because I went everywhere. And eventually the word traveled, I guess. This is a long story, right? The word travel, and then it was Jan Yarbrough at Warner Brothers that had Peter Doyle there for Catwoman. And Peter needed some help, and there was nobody there because he was Luster. Nobody there was Luster, and he was trying to get like an assistant to help him, finish that Catwoman project. And so they had me travel to I don't even remember like how my name got there. Like, to be honest with you, perhaps it was through Discreet, or
you'd been established as an expert at some point.
Yeah, through the Yasberini brothers. Like, it must have been like, this connection kind of thing. And so I went there. Again, I met with Peter, I thought he was a strange guy, but very interesting. And Jan was lovely. And they both really wanted me to come. But then again, the visa fell into the cracks and I couldn't go. But I guess I stayed in Peter's mind because when he went to do Harry Potter, the Goblet of Fire, the fourth one, the first one was like chemicals, so there was no DI. He also had Charlie and the Chocolate Factory at the same time, like literally physically scheduled same time. And he was so excited for working with Tim Burton for the first time. Obviously, he didn't want to lose that opportunity. So he also didn't want to lose Harry Potter as a contract. So he reached out and he was like, hey, you'll have to meet with the DP and the director, and they have to sort of sign off on you. I'll be overseeing from over there, but, so that's kind of, I think his expectation was a little too high because when I arrived there, he wanted me to build a sand, but it was like, I used to do it with Discreet, with all of their like paper, like paper, technical paper to follow step by step with like their hardware and everything. Over there, like I show up in London and like, there you go. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. I'm not an engineer, So I spent like really late nights trying to figure it out. And eventually he got me an engineer to come and help because I was like, this is another level. Like I can do color, I can operate that software, but like, this is like, but like Mike Newell and Roger Pratt, loved me and it hit it off. And I had done like a lot of, I went to labs before to make sure I could talk printer points and more like, really the language of the lab because it was still quite like that back then. Yeah. And, and people were very traditional at that time. It was the early days of DI. So I think, there was a language that was way more from the film time. I mean, from the I say the lab, the chemical,
Right.
process. So I make sure like I immerse myself in that. And then I went to Hungary first to like just deep dive into like, because I knew the software really well, but I wanted to make sure like I knew how like an artist on a movie would like use it. Like, so I wanted to have a deeper knowledge. So I did that as well. And then that was it. That was my first movie.
Wow.
Basically. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is like the perfect intro to so much of what I want to ask you about today, which is, when I look at your work, you've worked on huge movies for many, many years now, like so many really big films, but you have a really, like we talked about this as we were leading into this conversation, it seems like you're often sought when the filmmaker wants to do something bold or big or different. Like you're not just that colorist who's been working either underneath an actual print and then a film print emulation for most of their career. Like we both know lots of colorists who good colorists that that's their thing.
Yeah.
You're like I can see it in all of your work. Like it's so varied, but I can see like you're touching every shot and shaping every shot so much of the time. And I guess it makes sense now that when you tell some of your backstory that, you got to know the box so well when I had no idea that you were a trainer and you helped set these things of building sands and stuff.
At the beginning, yeah. Like, I mean, it's very new. Like nobody knew this software. Everybody was coming from Telecine and, it was like kind of merging this kind of digital because people had done like commercial and things like that digitally, but, but film too. But I'm just saying, they had manipulated digitally, but like it was new for film, so, but yeah, I think, it's funny because I would argue almost that I had such a very cautious, traditional approach at the beginning. I would really literally just work printer points in density and, minimum shapes at the beginning. I'm saying I was trying to be kind of faithful of how you would shape on set, which I still have that. But at the same time, if you go back when we first started, we were using LUTs that were emulation of film, right? The chemical process. And you would like calibrate your LUTs to make sure like they would work, if you film out,
that's what when you were done, when you print.
That they would match the bath, the most current bath. I mean, you didn't have to do it all the time, but like once every a few months, you would have to make sure that so you do a film out test, make sure your LUT was in line with the bath, and depending of what lab you were going to. So, but chemically, it was bold. Mm-hmm. Like if you just like. Because a lot of even Harry Potter, the dailies were on print. It was print dailies. So, it would like really build a lot of contrast and build a lot of character through the images. And as we evolved, and eventually dropped the film emulation, and developed like curves that went with the camera. Like it was like, some, log curves that, or takes you to like a nice, healthy place or whatever. It was opening like a wide range of color. So when it did that at the beginning, I felt like kind of inclined to remain more into that filmic world, which people might maybe drifting away from, right? So like I was still building a lot. So all of a sudden it became very stylized as the aesthetic was going somewhere else, if that makes any sense.
It does, yeah.
And it's just an anecdote. Can I say that? Is it pronounced correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Like recently, not maybe a couple of years, pre-COVID, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, my God, COVID is a fug. A DP asked me to have a 5219, like a real like emulation LUT from the film days, and obviously at the time Technicolor, now a picture shop, but at still the same building. We have like a library of LUTs. We have everything, and we have Josh Pines.
You have Josh Pines.
Like it's like, so I get him like this beautiful LUT, and I sent it to because he really wanted, like, he was like, this is the look that I want for the movie. So I sent him the LUT, and then he, tested, and he was, oh my goodness, this is way too much.
Too heavy?
Too heavy. And I was like,
Wow.
well, that's really like not so long ago. You would have plugged that and everybody would have been, but you also could argue that, there was, people capture differently, people expose differently. There's so many things that have shifted under the rug. I don't know how to say it, but like without people, like it's
surface.
Almost like, you don't, it's gradual, but people like actually completely forgot the aesthetic of, they look at something and say, oh, it's so filmic, oh, it looks like so beautiful. But like if you would look at it from like, 15, 20 years ago, we have moved way past the aesthetic of the time. So, so sometimes something that might look, more aggressive of a look would not be that aggressive if we just compare it, if you just take like a log image and put like a film LUT on it. So,
yeah. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. I watched a couple minutes of the Book of Eli prior to our conversation. And I was thinking as I watched it, I'm like, exactly what you're saying. Like, wow, this in sort of like contemporary context feels very bold.
yeah.
But I'm looking at it, I'm like, that's a skip bleach, essentially. Like that's the character that, I don't know if that's the emulation you guys went with or anything like that.
Yeah, we wanted a bit of an ENR, like the old, bleach bypass store, feel to it, without obviously, but at the time, like it was a little bit of a hybrid. The LUT was a little bit of a hybrid of still like a film emulation.
Was it shot negative? Was it film capture or was it digital?
No, it was digital. It was a red.
Wow. That was a red and you did that with it? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's geek out for a second. Was that like that's probably still the days of like Red Gamma 4?
Yes.
Were you even working in a log curve?
Yeah, it's the early days of red. Yeah.
So no log curve, probably.
Well, not, like we had color science to try to soften the curve for us. But I mean, it's, it was, it's going back years ago, but like, nobody thought we could do it because it was so abrupt and all that. And the range was, a little chop, and you had like, I think it was like, 3 or 4 green for like every other color, like there was like, there was a lot of, technicalities to it that we weren't sure if we would be able to achieve it. But at the same time, we discussed we shot it so flat. Like, I didn't shoot it. Don Burgess shot it very flat, well
really
lit.
Filled it in a lot.
Yeah. So like, by really going technical on how to use it, we were able to achieve, although, we were primarily like not really log curve, not really, I believe, I don't want to say that. I'd have to go to my notepad. I have to be careful.
Go back to the records.
Right. Back to the records. But yeah, so, but what helped me is like, even at that time, I was super animus to work from I never debayered outside. So I would debayer everything within the Baselight, and everything that would get debayered outside would need to match my Baselight. So that was also very helpful as far as like, I feel like color journey wise, and making sure that, however the material would be manipulated outside would match what I did in my box. And also it gives you more, latitude in the box to control any anomalies,
anomalies.
Anomalies.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I like yours better though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well. So that was. But it was challenging, Book of Eli, because yes, it was. There was a little bit of that filmic look that Albert really wanted. That Don had worked. Like I said, to make sure that we would be having the range to achieve it. I think. A lesson learned, and I'm not throwing anything under the bus. I'm just saying, I think, VFX, when you go with a bold look, VFX need to be strong.
Yes.
And a lot of time they have little technical issues, that if you're bright and soft, and if you just leave it lug, they're not going to reveal itself, But if you step on it, it will break because they're already broken, right? A lot of, like we always have this debate between oh, you broke the VFX. It's
Yeah.
most likely already broken. You know, if your cloud is jiggling, I'm not jiggling the cloud.
I'm
you know,
just showing it.
the cloud's showing the jiggle because we're pushing a little bit, and then you can see, you know, your technical issues. So you know, so I ended up having to, you know, there was some VFX that, you know, it was difficult because originally I was like, you know, we should pre-time some of it, but they thought it would be not necessary, and you know, and it was chasing tail. So I did a lot of VFX on this. Like I had to do a lot of my own, darken the clouds, and the green haze is all me. You know, like I don't know if you saw it with the beginning with the cat and the cloud of green floating. That's me.
You?
Yeah, like I did a lot of VFX on it to try to help them and to try to also get away from maybe some things that might be broken and all that. I would try to fix it and all that. So, but it's a look that has hold through time. I personally feel.
I completely agree. And I mean, you're talking about being at least a decade ahead of the curve on like so many of the things you're talking about now are standard practice of like, hey, VFX, we're going to give you a show LUT to comp under so that you can see whether your work will hold up under what we're going to do to it. Like all this stuff that we figured out like years later, you were on the front lines figuring out in whatever that was, probably 2007 or 8. You were grading that?
8, 9, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what a fascinating, like, as you said, I completely agree. That movie is held up so well. And it's just such an interesting moment in the history of how we like kind of master motion images because so much was in flux at that time. And you really rode that wave all the way through from there into like, I mean, that's like Jonah Hex was not that long afterward, I think.
Oh my God, Jonah Hex. You mentioned Jonah Hex. Oh, so funny. Probably one of the worst movies I've ever watched. Not worse as far as the color was great. And it was a trip to color and it was fun. But it's just like a story of a movie that could have been so great that went a little downhill, I must say.
Oh my goodness.
Have you ever watched the whole thing?
You know, I think I watched the whole thing in theaters when it came out.
You did?
I don't think I've seen it since. And would I have seen it? I would have seen a print of it probably at the time.
I think we were still printing. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, like I can remember in those days, like I used to go back to the movie counter and ask them for a refund if they'd shown me a digital projection because it was like more kind of an exception. I was like, you're not going to pass anything over on me. I want to see the print.
The print, right? Oh, that's funny.
Which would be crazy now, but so I know I saw it in the theater, and I'm pretty sure I saw a print of it.
Yeah.
But what was the deal with Jonah Hex? What was that experience?
Well, I mean, it was supposed to be a rated R movie, and then, you know, all of a sudden, you know, they got cold feet. I don't know if you ever like read the comic book, but they are gnarly.
Dark.
I mean, you want to talk like, I mean, it's violent, like super violent, and it's rad. I mean, it's really good, but it's and it should have like just stayed rated R, but I think they had a few rated R movies the studio had, and they got a little cold feet. And so like trying to rewrite and then try to reshoot and like water it down. And, you know, it was supposed to be very racy. I mean, like, you know, crazy, violent, and like lots of sex scene. And so like it just got watered down. So, and it got silly, you know, like the crystal ball. Like, I mean, it's just like the from like what I read at the beginning when the script was supposed to be and what the story was supposed to be to what it became. But I mean, color-wise, you know, there's some scene, like I really like when you see like the blue sky when he's like on his horse and walk. I mean, it's like this like classic Western. I mean, we did such fantastic look, and it was like a lot of work actually, but I'm just saying, I'm surprised you saw it. I don't know anybody that saw Jonah Hex.
I mean, I'm really curious with Jonah Hex. So you mentioned the script that you read. So you were obviously involved very early in that production. This is now what, 2009, 2010 maybe that you're
I think it's right after Book of Eli. I mean, I try to always like, I had like ask for, you know, I try to have like references or read the script every time if I can.
Sure.
Just to kind of, especially if we talk aesthetic ahead of time, if I know the story, I can kind of like visualize a little bit that aesthetic within the narrative of the story being told. So, you know, for me, it's more inspirational this way. Like, I think to immerse myself with the story. And in this case also, like I had asked Warner to give me access to, because they had like a big box of like the Jonah Hex
The comics. Yeah.
So I read a bunch. They were amazing.
Yeah.
And, like the looks of it, it was very Western, very gritty, so I was very excited. But as you turn it into like a PG-13, like obviously, like we still have a little bit of the bite into it, but we had to back off a little bit because it was, something else. Like it was not like what originally we had imagined it would be. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
Interesting.
It still was a good look.
Were you involved prior to production on that one or more like during or afterwards?
This one, like I wasn't involved for the dailies. I was involved for the dailies for Book of Eli. I try to be involved in the dailies if I am involved generally with the dailies if I am awarded the show
right
at the very beginning. But sometimes, as you know, we are awarded the show after. Mm-hmm. And this was the case. I was awarded the show after. But what I'm saying is like, when they started to talk to me about the look, like when the creative wanted to talk to me, like then, I asked for the script, they gave me the script, I look at the comic books, so even if it's after, I will still try to immerse myself before the DI starts,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so curious, like I don't even know at that point in our very young craft of digital color grading, are you making like a show LUT for a movie like Jonah Hex? Are you grading underneath one master look of some sort, or is it all kind of done by hand?
Jonah Hex, because I was not with the dailies, I didn't give them, but I always have, I basically will have my, my LUT curve, and then I'll have like back in the day, we had still sort of like film LUT type hybrid.
Got it.
So,
like a viewing transform type of thing?
Like everything we've done that we were still going to print, we would still have like print LUTs at the time. But, it's always been like at the tail end, basically, grading, and now, like, for the dailies, it will go like, you'll have your, LUT curve, and then you'll have your CDL, and then you'll have like the show LUT after, right? Like, that's kind of usually how it goes. But, back in the day, I would have like a lot that I would give to dailies that they could use and then customize it depending of the camera, the show, whatever. Now it's even more fine-tuned, like it's even more like intrinsic and like there's more to it than there was back then, I feel, because it was still early days. So we, and I mean, some of the shows back then still would do, print dailies.
Right.
So it's, like I cannot recall all of the ones, but, we're still kind of like really mixed, right? Prints and, because I remember even like Book of Eli, because Albert really wanted it to look like film, right? So we added grain at the time, so some of the first, and it was pretty heavy grain. And I was telling him like, hey, we're going to go to the film. Most people will see it on film, not the digital version. So the film would add even more to what we have. And then he saw like a really, third generation print somewhere in Prague. It was like, see, that's the grain I wanted. We could have gone. And I was like, well, but that's because it's a third generation. If I had put that on our digital, you would have it would have been so grainy like that third generation that you would have. I was like it looked good like somewhere in a little tight theater in Prague because we didn't go crazy. Yeah. So we still laugh about that and still debate about Book
how
of Eli.
How far you should have gone with the grain.
Yes, we still, and it's funny because now we're doing the prequel to John Wick, and I was going to go with more grain, and he's the one backing off a little bit. So it's just it's an interesting. Yeah, I was like, no, we can totally embrace the grain on this. Like it's not. It's straight. It's like a series, right? So. And it was like, whoa, the TVs and so it's the other way around.
Oh, I guess that's interesting because now in this case, you don't have to worry about like, oh, but what about the folks who are viewing this on a print? And I've got to kind of leave a little bit of room for the grain that'll add.
Yes.
No more prints, I guess.
No,
so we don't
have to worry about that. What you see, what you get. I'll show you in HDR, you'll see it in SDR, you'll see exactly where your grain is. Feeling in both of those, target, and we'll be, we still have grain. I'm just saying, I was like, we can really go. And it's like, good level there.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's just like so interesting that you've been in the DI thing kind of from those early days like that. And I'm curious, like, you know, again, looking at sort of like the late 2000s, early 2010s, at what point did like ACES and color management and all that stuff kind of come across your radar? Is that something that you adopted early or?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I'll tell you a story. That first of, you know, I'm a bit of a geek, I guess, in a way. Like that's why, like when I have like the very strong artistic background, obviously, but that's why when I went to discrete, they trained me very technically, but I was like a sponge and I absorbed that's why I could understand LUT mapping and this and that. So color science came very naturally to me, the understanding of it. I'm not like someone that, you know, people will say it's pro and con. I tend to make it very accessible the way, like I talk about color science like I would talk to my daughter who's 9 years old. You know, like I try to simplify it. So if you have a big, you know, meeting about it with the dailies people and all sorts of different people, that I explain it or different languages, you know, I explain it in a way that is going to be very easily understood instead of like, you know, using eloquent, you know, wording or whatever. But I have a very deep so Josh and I, you know, are on the same page. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he read my mind, I read his. We're very much on the same page. But my big breakthrough, or something that for me pushed my brain, was when I did Speed Racer. And we're talking early days again. That's prior to Book of Eli. So when I did Speed Racer, that was definitely print going to film. But they wanted to shoot Rec 709 and they wanted to color in Rec 709. But it was going to film and it was going to be 9 negative and prints made out of that. And it was like a major print release, right? And I'm like, well, how am I going to put those Rec 709 colors on print? It was a colorful show.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of bright primary
stuff.
Very
colorful. I mean, it was like, I'll circle back to that story after, but remind me of the ASC, me sitting there and DP's talking about Speed Racer when I'm done. So there was a guy at the time that had come from ILM working with us at Pacific Title. That's even before, like, you know, I went to MPI and then Technicolor. So, and then Picture Shop. But it was Pacific Title, and there was this guy called Blake Sloan that had come from ILM, and he was from the color science type, you know, background at ILM, like, you know, in the VFX world. So he understood very well, like, color science from the VFX perspective. It was brilliant, and he would help me create my LUTs and, you know, like tweak things. And when you do the side by side, you know, so very, very smart guy. So I tell him, is there a way to, and I'm going to try to simplify this because, you know, like but he got it. I mean, even like if I told, so I was like, is there a way when you create this, you know, Ford lookup table to invert all these values, you know? So basically what I was trying to achieve is like, I would like put something, like it would make like a completely erroneous, like not usable negative, right? But I would like basically plug this invert LUT into my grade, and then it would go forward, which would like allow, you know, I'm destroying the color in a way, you know, like, so I'm taking like everything that is positive, you're going to reverse, you know, and then we're going to go forward. So basically I'm going to force these colors into, and he was like, oh, I don't know. So like, you know, he's like, he's giving me all sorts of version and everything is breaking. And so, you know, because we had like pure blue, like, I mean, there is no pure colors that would go on film.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. Like there's no like this pure RGB you can get digitally. You don't get that like when you go chemically. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to fit anything. And I was trying to tell the Wascherski, you know, this is going to be like impossible. Like we should, you know, not grade in 709. We should do like a 709 to this, to P3 and do like that. And then this way at least, but they wanted those colors. We captured this and we want this
Wow.
You know,
On the
and they were
print.
like, if we have to compromise the print, we'll compromise the print, but people that will see it and like properly will be the ones that see it digitally. And I was like, well, yeah, but like
Yeah,
theaters
what
are
about
still print.
most theaters? Yeah.
You know, so for me, it was like, I have to give them the best that I can. So Blake worked on doing this inverse. So you basically mirror, right? You understand like the values are just going kind of opposite, right?
Mhm.
So you grade, that goes under your grade, and then the forward goes after that inverse. And then this way you're basically taking all your color, you're like making them negative value, and then they go back positive, and then you could get like pure RGB output.
So you're essentially, if I'm understanding correctly, you were trying to get Blake to build something for you that would invert what the print was going to do.
Yes.
So that you could get a net, you know, like if you
Yes.
pass through a red 1, green 0, blue 0,
Yeah,
you
this is
get close to that on the print.
2006, 2000.
And this was your idea?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can ask Blake Sloan. You can go and call him he works at Marvel now, and he will confirm
Wow.
this.
You are a color science wizard. That's a great idea.
But you know what? It's funny though. Like I'm very because I'm really good at math and stuff, but like I'm super like intuitive. So that's why like the words to me, like people can be very technical and said that, but like I'm more just like, oh no, but like if we do that, it should work, and if you do. I'm more like that. And I have like a crazy workflow for Dolby as well, like that Josh approved, that people are like, what? Completely reverse engineering, because that's how my brain works. But you know, I don't sound very techie, but if you put me to it, it's like I'll come up with crazy workflow.
Yeah.
So Blake is like working. We finally get it. And it was a mad delivery. So, and that's a story that I'm telling you that I don't think I told anybody, but it's like I work 110 hours a week for 2 weeks in a row. And we're like we had to deliver. And I remember one night I was like, listen, like, I know we have a good, invert, but I have to QC everything before it goes to print, because I don't know. Like this was like the most colorful movie I've ever worked on. And it's still early in my career. So, there's a lot of pressure. Like, I'm happy to work with the Washiski. It's a Joel Silver, because Joel Silver like was feeding me a lot of work too. So like vouching for me for his, up and coming, the Washiski were not up and coming, but for a lot of up and coming, but also they met with me because Joel like vouched for me.
Yeah, he vouched for you.
So it's, I think 4 a.m. And I call somebody, which I'm not going to say the name, but I say, I have to go home and come back in the morning with fresh eyes and QC this, because I'm wiped.
You're fried, yeah.
I can't see shit, excuse my French. So it's like, I was like, I cannot do this. I am absolutely incapable of QCing, and I can't really delegate. Everybody, I've always had a small team, but like, if I'm fried, they're fried. Everybody's fried, And it was like, absolutely not. We have a deadline. They said we have to film this tonight. I was like, 4 a.m. till if I come back like in 5 hours, really? Like, absolutely not. We got to film out. So we film out like it was like, let's say real 5, right? Mm-hmm. And I get the print in the afternoon the next day. It looked good, side by side, everything looked good. And then, you have Speed Racer flying his car in the sky. And like it's supposed to be blue sky, and all of a sudden it's like all purple, everything purple. And it was like the only scene that we had this kind of blue primary color going through. The other scenes were like not in that kind of range of primary color, but it was like it's seen in the sky. And I'm like, I am dying, right? It's like it's not even like a darker blue or a less bluer blue, or a blacker blue,
magenta blue,
but it's purple.
Yeah,
like it's like just purple. So I'm like, oh man, and I'm imputable at the end of the day. It doesn't matter that somebody this and that. Like, so I call everybody. I'm like, this, I have to reject it. But there's been like 9 negative recorded of that reel. You understand how much it means money-wise?
Yes.
Okay, that's a lot of dough. So, so I raise the flag. I'm like, it's no good. Those 9 negative are trash, and none of it is good. So there's a meeting being called, and then, Joel Silver comes in, the washes keys are there, everybody's there, and I'm like showing them the print, and I said, I'm sorry, I wanted more time. And, this is a very complicated thing we're doing, and we have to rework the invert,
Right.
so I have to go back and we have to figure the math for this particular range. And I was lucky enough that the washer, everybody they were like, hey, you need time. You call us direct to our line. It's fine. What you're doing is so wonderful. We didn't even think we could get those colors. No worries. No worries. It's like, we're talking like so much money. Like I was
Right.
like, I was like, my career is over. I'm crying, like depressed, And no, everyone was like, thought like it was so brilliant that in the first place I was able to give them that, and it was so close. So Blake and I go back. We do like wedges, and I make sure like all the other blues that are coming in other scenes are gonna like match, and I pass through, and I get like a full day to be able to QC and make sure everything's gonna fit. And then we do it. I mean, we, like, meaning like he's the one writing obviously the invert, but like, doing all the, but we test it and it works, and then we got Speed Racer, the most colorful movie on print. And then one day I was at the ASC coming back to my story, and I hear this DP like talking about HDR. It's like, you wouldn't want Speed Racer on the HDR. Imagine what it's going to do. And I was like, well, it got quoted, probably not for the good reason. But if anyone knew like the madness of being able to output those colors. And it was funny because way later on, now when studios started to ask for archive, and they wanted print archive, they're using this. This is the method now, because we don't use, film simulation anymore. Nobody uses film emulation. So you can't like just film out a print.
Right.
It's not going to look anything. It's not going to be a reference.
The creative intent.
So they're using that. They came in with that like years later. So I always tell Blake, we should have patented our, like, we should have like, but for me, it was not like a thing of like, ooh, look at me, I did that. It was like, how can I make this happen for this movie?
Wow.
And then, move on. But it's funny because it became something that now, we tell the studio, your negative is worth nothing. It's only the print.
Yep.
Is going to be useful because, then the negative, like, you would look at the negative and you'd be like, what the hell, right? Because the colors are all over the place. It's you do that in order to be able to get the print to look like the movie, and the print becomes your archive. So that's my story.
Wow. From one color science geek to another, I'm having fun as you're talking, trying to visualize what the cube of that inverse LUT looks like. It must look insane.
Oh no, it looks crazy. Yeah,
like
that's what I'm saying.
Nuts.
If you take off your Ford and you just look at it, it's everything's clipping, everything is whack. Colors look, it's awful.
It's anticipating what's to come from the print.
Yes, and then it fits so it stretches to the limit.
Yeah,
it completely destroys your negative basically in order to fit. But it's like it's a reverse engineering.
Okay, so I want to switch gears for a minute. And we talked about HDR a couple times in the last few minutes. And, as we talked about, you've had this career that's really run through a good chunk of this whole young discipline of digital color grading. And now you're still working and still doing all kinds of amazing color. And I imagine you're doing a lot of HDR these days. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah. It's part of the game now.
Mm-hmm. The Dolby HDR, right? Because for a little bit there was like HDR10 where you could potentially do 709 separate and HDR10 separate. But a few studios were still doing it, which was kind of nice in a way. But I think now everybody has adopted the Dolby. So any HDR that is called for is through the Dolby world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like I gotta ask about your Dolby moves.
I don't know if I want to give my secrets. I'm not sure.
I don't blame you at all. If I had your secrets, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, I definitely have. What's great that I can tell you is like, I definitely did I'm embracing the Dolby, definitely, but in a reverse engineering way. And I think by doing so, it has made my client embrace HDR way more.
Mm-hmm.
And I can give you a hint to my workflow. I do not grade in HDR.
Gotcha.
That's a secret. So, I do grade HDR, but I get my HDR graded, but like I do not, when I do my session with my clients, it's in SDR.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I reveal the HDR. And
Got
it's
it.
beautiful.
I buy that 100%. I have a hunch you are not necessarily trimming every shot in that case.
Basically, I have different LUTs for my HDR, so I can not constrain it, but like I can like round it at 600 or round it at 1,000, or I can go a little bit above 1,000, like so that it could, like if you have a 4,000 nits delivery, arguing that maybe in the future we can use a lot of light and very little energy. So if some studio asks for 4,000, I can like round it a little higher than 1,000 nits for that as well. So I have different flavor of LUTs for that. However, when I grade, either if I know, there's different approach. So if I have a movie that, although we're doing a projection version, but the, primary delivery or what's going to be most important, like maybe it'll be 2 weeks in theater, but then it's going to live forever. I might already grade the projected version into Dolby Universe, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So, or, any of my series, like that I'll do Netflix or whatsoever, I will grade. It looks like I'm grading a good old SDR, normal, but it's already all under the
It's
the
under
hood.
a Dolby thing.
It's under the Dolby thing. So
Got it.
I'm grading along, doing that. It's already the secret where I'm not going to reveal is how am I able to achieve that, right? Because there's multiple steps. You cannot just like put Dolby grade. Like there's an order of like how I can do this in order to achieve what I'm telling you that I'm going to achieve. So I do it. So I'm grading. I'm already in Dolby. I have done different steps, and there's like to be able to get the result that I want. So they sign off on SDR. As I was doing my SDR, I am blindly, but because I've bulletproofed that workflow, I'm blindly grading my
You're
HDR.
blind piloting the HDR.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then when you side by side them, they are lining up beautifully. So basically, I'm not, like sometimes like either you grade in HDR for your clients, right? And then you give them this beautiful thing. And you're like, well, we're going to, I can only do so much with the SDR. We're using the Dolby slider and this and that. And they're interlinked, right? So, we might compromise the SDR and you could pitch it as like, well, because the SDR is kind of like, eventually nobody will see that anyway, right? Well, I mean, that's a rich concept because like Europe is mostly SDR. The rest of the world is mostly SDR. And I care about everybody. Like I want people in India seeing my movie the same way. Like meaning like, so to me, SDR is still the master. I always think of like the master in that, in the future, maybe only HDR will remain and my HDR will be beautiful and healthy and will pass through time. But, I like to have a good, healthy. So I'm not willing to compromise that. I'm not willing to use a bunch of slider to try to come and get it as best as I can to the HDR. And the way I do it, then you get like a fantastic HDR that has like, that is not overly crunch or stretch or all of a sudden you have highlights that compete that you didn't want it to compete, It really kind of maps it where I want it, but blindly. So then when I do the side-by-side, I'll have perhaps, I would say per scene, 10 to 20 shots that I have to trim in HDR. Like let's say maybe they're a little too bright or too dark that I have to adjust. And then I'll use the Dolby slider to make my SDR back to what it should be. So it's really reverse engineering, but it gets me like and the DPs, like, I mean, they've been embracing my last session, like we had watched SDR the whole time, and I was like, okay, like I'm ready to show you the HDR. And then the client was like, close the other. I mean, I just want to see that now, because it's not like it's not like, oh, it's not my movie. What is this? It's their show. It's their movie. And then it has this immersive feeling, without having competing element, or, feeling too stretched or inky, or like getting like a different kind of aesthetic that they were aiming for.
That makes perfect sense. And I think, all secrets revealed or not, you've given us some really good lessons. Like, I love, you just said it's reverse engineering. You've designed a system, a pipeline for producing results that align in the way that you want them to, as opposed to aiming at things like whack-a-mole style, shot after shot, scene after scene, show after show, to try to get HDR and SDR kind of level. Sounds like you've got systems in place to help you do that.
Well, because it's hyperactive mentally, right? How can I get that? You'll get like sometimes it's a happy accident, or sometimes it's like not that you get burned, but like, it's like, surely, like, it cannot be that hard. It shouldn't be like this. And it's like, I don't want to be handcuffed to a workflow that is not mine. I don't want like Dolby to dictate. Sorry, Dolby. I don't want Dolby to dictate how I'm going to work. And I don't want Dolby to develop like a grading tool within the grading tool, right? That becomes like counterintuitive. Like, that's a little too much of a beast. I don't want to like eventually like, oh, well, we're all going to grade, like Dolby's going to become my tool. And then I have to, no, I think what they did is fantastic. I think it if you know how to navigate through it, it's fantastic. I just think you have to be creative with the workflow. You have to explore things, see what works, how you can make it work, and it's through trials and errors, and really trying, because a lot of people were like, either they hate HDR because you'd start and then it's crank down, and because they think it's so bright, right? Even if there's a lot that takes it at 600, they're not used to this, let's say, so they crank down everything, and then like they have their look that they love, right, in HDR, and then their SDR is like, I have nothing left,
right?
Even if you try to, you cannot do positive lift, right? Just a little bit by 0.02 something
or something,
so it's like, well, and then like stretching and trying to like it's going to be compromise, and it's like you have to sell that, and I'm like, I'm never for compromise. I want to give you both. I want you to be happy, like, on both. So I'll do whatever it is, and I'll, and then I'll, validate it with Josh Pine. He's like, that's brilliant. Yeah, of course it's going to work, Maxine. I'm like, okay, Josh said it's okay, let's do it.
This is your campaign platform for president of the new colorist union whenever we get around to, like forming such a thing. That makes such good sense to me. I love that. And I mean, I feel like that's it sounds like a big part of your current workflow, but I'm also curious, now today in 2023, when you're grading your shows or your films or the things that you're tackling, have you adopted this sort of like what people might call like an LMT or like a scene look that's happening before your output transform? No?
Custom everything.
Yeah.
I never have any.
So you're just doing, it's like your output transform and then everything is your hands.
Yes.
Very cool.
Even don't tell anybody, most of the time, ditch the CDL. Honestly, I did it myself, the CDL. It's just like, or unless I inherit something that I know that, it's kind of mostly there. And, there's some like more straightforward shows. It's a comedy. They got like kind of a good level. I go and balance it, add a little bit of my touch, and maybe the CDL can be helpful. But if it's like something I already have, like a look development, we've talked about it, the CDLs are good for the studio, for pics, to send it out there, to just make it look, like nice and healthy, that nobody's screaming, so they're there for that. But like, I usually, like, everything's custom, everything. It gives me way more latitude. I mean, the good isn't the good. I don't know. That's how I do it. That's how I've always done it. So I've not explored that. I have not explored outside of my.
I mean, whatever you're doing is working. That's working great. Do you have like a part? You're in a Baselight, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have like a part of your layer stack that is a consistent thing that you've developed that kind of like stays for all of your shots or scenes? Or is it just scene by scene, shot by shot, you're grading and building what it's going to be?
Well, I'm very organized. So everything kind of labeled. So I have like, I'll have like my balance pass. So there's a layer that is there just to balance. And then I'll have like my basic looks, and then I build upon, and everything that I'll put, I will. So if you look at my stack, they're very organized, and you know what's what, and you can find yourself in there, beauty, shaping, like what it's shaping, like, so I do that. But no, I have never like took something from another movie and brought it to another thing, or from another show and brought it. Like, it's always carte blanche. I'm starting fresh on everything. Because, even for the LUTs, depending of like the cameras, we do camera tests, I'll tweak, I have like my curve that I really like. It's very open. It's like more luggish in the sense that it's not very aggressive. I always try to sell it and say like, hey, do whatever you want with the CDL, but use this because it's going to be healthy and it's going to put us in a good place. It's sometimes difficult it's not, I think, I don't want to go by age or discriminate, but I think for a certain generation of DP, it's more easy to adopt.
Sure.
They love this soft curve. They love what it does. They love like where things land. And for a younger generation of DP, sometimes it's a little bit, they're more used to like the K1S1 or like things that are like, more aggressively to start with and, really punchy.
Right.
So it's kind of an adjustment. But a lot of time, if I get them to, like I say, well, look, and if you do this, and when you expose, and if you don't go like, more than, 5 steps above gray and this and that, you'll see, like, we will have, like, you will be like in kindergarten playing, eating candy in the DI room. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, trust me.
You'll be in a great
place. Like people, So most of them, but like I will tweak a little bit. They'll be, okay, I love it, but can you add a little bit of, just a tiny bit of contrast, just a tiny bit of this, and then we do our camera test and all that. And then we set on something, and then Josh goes and compile all of this for my AGR and all my output and all that. But apart from that aspect, that I start with the same base lot that I have for each camera. And if there's a new camera, we'll, modify for that. Apart from that, everything between that and, the target and all that is all custom per show.
That's your house. Yeah. That's where you party.
Yes, exactly.
That's really cool. Wow. Fascinating. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious because we've talked about your color science department, and in particular, Josh Pines, a couple times already today. What is that relationship like? What is it like to have a color scientist who you can reach out to and collaborate with as needed? Like, what do you guys do together? How do you work together?
I mean, I think like in a way, if you can speak the same language, I'm not talking French and English. I think I have to say very little to Josh to understand what I'm saying or where I'm going, or I mean, it's very fascinating because, we're often on the same page, or even before we have a pre-meeting, before we have the meeting with the clients, let's say for the dailies. And because, when I'm involved with the dailies, providing the LUTs and what we recommend and this and that, and, he's also very artsy. He's, very out there, big personality. Yeah. So I love Josh. So I don't know. It's like we develop our own language. He knows how I like to work. Even when I get there, and you could ask him, but like, I know when I got there, I was the first one to really, there were people with Baselight that he had dealt with, but I was the first one really implementing like the DRT style kind of workflow. A lot of people were still just plugging a lot, like a full-on lot, at the tail end, like they didn't have like separate, like I'll have my curve, my grade, my output LUT, kind of like the DRT style. I don't know if you know a little bit Baselight, but it's just kind of deconstructed a little bit than just having your show LUT at the tail. That would compile, gotcha. Like it's a little different. So it's, I don't know if I explain it right, but like people were basically, you could be just like all across, just let's say, there'd be like no color journey. It'd be like, it'd be like, let's say log and then output.
So more of like a display referred, like just grading everything to the display by hand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that's kind of like a lot of people workflow.
Yes.
So when I came in, I was, So like he had to scratch his head at the beginning. He had to come up with like, because he had to create these DRT, which is what's fascinating with the DRT is like you have this curve and then on the output, you just say where you're going and it does it all for you, right? Like that's the color journey. It just like maps everything. You don't have to change your LUT for everything that you're going to do. You just have this.
You flip your output.
You just flip your output and it knows how to map everything. So, but when I got there, they didn't do that. So like, I remember like at the beginning, it was like a little frustrating and we might have butt head a little bit. But then when he had his aha moment, then it was like, everybody should do this, like, so I know that other colorists I would like started using that workflow as well. So yeah. But I don't want to sound just like a geek. I love, like, I'm ultimately an artist. I'm just saying, but there's you have to put a lot of love in that as well to protect the finished product.
I think your artistic side shines through when you're talking about these things because as you point out, that's how creative intent is protected and preserved for all these different deliverables.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense to me. Very cool. And I'm curious now, now we're starting to talk more about your process in Baselight, which I know for maybe a lot of us listening, there's, I'm sure, plenty of Resolve users out there and folks who the Baselight is sort of mysterious to.
Right.
But I'm just curious about, in general, when you're in the Baselight, do you have like, all right, these are like my half a dozen like tools that I always work with by default and I kind of branch out when I need to? Or are you always mixing and matching and trying out new stuff on every project? What's your relationship with that tool set?
I mean, I'll mix and match, but I do have my preferred definitely. Like all my balance is always done in film grade, old traditional,
Yeah.
And I customize also sensitivity of my nubs and like the quarter points for, so I have a lot of like very fine-tuned Maxine way that my team all has to have the same fine-tune, we're three, same guys with me for over 13 years now.
These are the color assistants who support you.
Yeah, Jeff is, he was kind of more of an assistant, but now like I fully give him credit for being like a colorist in his own title, because we've done sometimes 4 shows at the same time and he's done a lot of pre-grading, like the balancing pass I'm talking about.
Sure.
And then, or at the tail end, I'm on another show. So and we get a bunch of VFX, he can match them to my look. So he's, build more. And, like if there's been like little project here and there that I couldn't do, like student film or whatever, like he's been able to do a few of those as well. So, people have to have like a trajectory. Yeah. You have to have aspirations. So like, I think, he's very talented and he's, building up and all that. So, and Eric is like, he's a genius, of an editor, confirmed, but like we all kind of like, when I got them in my team, I wanted everybody to be able to do a little bit, because I used to do kind of everything for myself. So like the format, which is madness, I would do myself and do all the math, and make sure that everything pixel to pixel, it drives me bananas. But I was in charge of that. So if I would open a scene and it would be like format change, I would flip out, like, I'm very nice, but I would flip out. I would be like, oh my God, like who opened and what format change, because everything is like, you can like screw things up, So I sort of, like I wanted all of them to kind of know of everything. But then I kind of delegated certain tasks for, so that, Jeff mostly like me, Jeff can only touch the format, Eric is the whiz of like, Eric is like, if there's a new version of Baselight, he will know all the tools before us. I don't know how he does it. Like, oh yeah, you can like go over there and you paint this like with this new paint tool and like, he knows everything.
When did you learn that? I thought you were working.
Yeah, it's just like, he's just brilliant. I don't know how, like, I don't know how he does it, but he's just brilliant. So we're a very well-oiled machine, but like because of that, like, I have my basic tools, like, the film grade, hue shift, I loved. The texture equalizer, I like. I do my grain custom, so I scan different stocks of grain, and then I come them myself and control the speed and control the level, and then but because we do a lot of grain, I don't do the live grain. And none of my clients and none of my show, none of my film have had live grain. You're not the live grain guy, right?
I'm not the live grain guy. No. How dare you?
I'm just teasing. That was a joke. So I don't do like, so I customize. And then, I don't know. There's so many tools in Baselight. It's such a powerful thing. Yes, I mean, there's 5 things that, I don't do curve grade. I stay away. They're not allowed even, like, I don't want to, if I see it in my stack, you're fired. Meaning like.
Get it out of there.
It's a very dangerous tool. And if you don't know how to use it right, it can, I've seen a lot of, I'm sure someone could have watched my grade and say, oh, that's broken. Maybe, like it might happen to everybody. But like, I know for a fact that I've seen people using this and it breaks the grade. Like I've set eyes on that, so there's certain things, like if I use a curve grade, it's going to be specific for something to maybe save some highlights or, go and grab something specifically, but it's not allowed in my stacks, but yeah, like it's really per project. Like I use a lot of blend, I do a lot of VFX, I do a lot of beauty, so it's a little bit all over the place, whatever I need.
I remember, I think my earliest curiosities with Baselight might be your fault, because I remember reading an interview with you talking about Sully and talking about the way you use the layers. And there's something in there about I think you might have been talking about blend modes, or like using them in a kind of unusual way for some of that film, which has a very distinctive look.
Yeah.
But I had forgotten about that until right now. I was like, that was an interview with Maxine where you were talking about just the way you were talking about the layers and the way you work with the Baselight. I was like, what is a Baselight? I didn't even know what it was at the time. Yeah. And I went off and learned it because I was so fascinated by it. Boy, that was a beautiful looking movie, wasn't it?
So yeah, it was nice. I mean, it was a lot of white hair and white sky, but apart from that, yes, that's a little tricky, and you're like,
you got to get in there with that curve tool to roll that over.
You give it a little haircut, but it's yeah. I mean, it was. I don't know. Like I think, of my movies with Clint, I think I mean, it's a controversial movie, but American Sniper was a great look, and
yes.
Tom and I, we're really proud of that, and then. Now, like I have also worked with Eve, that has done like a few movies with Clint, and even I now are doing also other movies because he's done a lot of movie with Clint, but then also Jonathan Levin. So now we're doing movies with Jonathan, but I really like Richard Joel. That was a good look.
Yeah, that was a great one too.
Like a little bit more. That's the one that Eve wanted the 5219, and when he got it, he was like, this is too much,
Too
so
crazy.
It's still kind of like, it's a rich movie. And
yeah.
It's like he wanted to have a bit of that era feel and all that, but like not quite like the good old film emulation.
Yeah.
A little less.
I mean, it's so funny you mentioned that. I feel like I've talked about it with, people who I work with as a colorist, or certainly other colorists. Part of like the film thing that is one of the hardest things to replicate when you're doing an emulation, quote unquote, is that you're burdened with having to look at it before the emulation. And that way, when you have that context and you turn it on, you're like, whoa, that's not my movie anymore.
Right.
Whereas with the film, it's like, you don't see like the non-film version of your print. Like it's just, it has that strong slope in the middle and that shadow compression and all that color stuff. That's just the only way you ever see the images. So
right.
You don't have the chance to sort of like pump the brakes and be like, whoa, is this too crazy? Whereas
right.
when you're emulating film, I think that's a lot of people's reactions today is when you do a full strength one-to-one emulation. It's like, wow, that is.
Yeah. And sometimes like if you don't look at like a restoration print, like if you really get like an old print from a movie from the 90s, like I can give you like an example, like or the 70s or 80s. If you go look at the Orange Clock, c'est quoi,
Clockwork Orange?
Yeah, Clockwork Orange, print and all that. It's like everything is way more bold than people like remember. Like there's like, like we've seen a lot of like, you have the print, you would have the print, and then they would make like the home video version, which most of the time was way too bright. You know what I'm saying? A lot of time. And so the memory that people have of film sometimes I feel is like a false memory syndrome. Like it's like they remember, the idea of like, Gone with the Wind on their TV that's been restored, the color, the digitalized, go see the old print. It has a different film, but nobody has access to those old print.
Right.
Unless you have a movie theater that, has kept all these beautiful print that they screen once in a while, most of the time it's like a digital version. It's been restored, it's been digitized, and then trying to be faithful, but I've seen people doing restoration, trying to be faithful to like an old print is a challenge as well. They have to find the elements and piece it back. Sometimes they have just the neck, sometimes just a piece of the print, this and that. It's all patched together. So, so we have really moved away from that aesthetic, and it's like our nostalgic idea of what film was. So, but film was bold, generally speaking. And obviously everybody had different ways to approach it. But I remember that the last film that I was like, film that I thought was like, okay, like that is beautiful, mastered film was, there was two. There was two magician, and I'm sorry for the colorist that did the one digitally. I don't know who that is, but there was two magician movie that came at the same time. One I think was Nolan.
Yes.
And the other one was like
The Prestige and The Illusionist. Yes.
And I was like, the print was like this absolute masterpiece. But like, even that, I challenge anybody to go back and look at that print and realize how bold it is.
Yeah, like those shadows are gone in some scenes.
How bold.
Yes.
And beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's like now, like, it's like, I have Albert, I have Clint, I have a few clients that embrace like, like strong shadow. Like I have a book about that, black and white lighting, John Alton, I think. I can't remember. But like,
Painting with Light.
Yes.
It's somewhere in the studio. I love that book.
Yes. Yeah. So, so like there's something that I use, and now people like are shying away, they're afraid, but maybe just the eye, like it's like this kind of fear, because we have moved away from that aesthetic fundamentally. Nobody wants to admit it, but yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of what it is. And it's funny because I just did like a movie with A.V. Rockwell, like keep your eye on this woman. I mean, she is brilliant. And we did like, probably you want to say, like you're saying, oh, people go to you because bold and this and that. I mean, if I've done something that is like bold, like it looks like a, 1990 print, that is it. I mean, we went for it, but like not as, I think, originally, maybe she wanted to go more aggressively, but like, to hold up into like the medium that we have today, we pulled back a little bit and like kind of drift and giving it a different arc together. But at the end, she was so, I mean, thrilled, and it's a beautiful image, but it's like, even for me, went outside my comfort zone.
And which film is this?
It's called 1001. It just won Sundance, the drama.
Oh my goodness, the Grand Jury Prize.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I haven't seen this yet. I got to check it out.
And I mean, you read any reviews and they're talking about the color in a positive way. I mean, because it's like, it takes you to New York. It feels like a 1990 print. Like it has like, it's, because also we had like some stock shots that literally she was like, not like, can you imagine stock shot to, what we just filmed, but it was more like, like hybrid of both, right? Bring the stock shot more to what we shot, but also bring the shot, what we shot to look more like the stock shot so that it flows really nicely. So it was a very fun look, but like, it's very rare you'll hear me say, I mean, Albert pushed me out of my comfort zone sometimes on certain things. He's such a creative powerhouse, and I am the luckiest girl in the world to be working with him.
This is Albert Hughes.
Yes. And, it's like, I work really well with Kim Miles too. We did like, he's nominated for an ASC on the show. We worked together where we did like tree strip color process, but like I had to like, that was difficult. I did do 4 different lookup tables for him for onset, which one of them were like a 3 strip color. And that was like challenging, but it ended up like, I mean, it's a crazy, I think that's the episode he got nominated. I mean, it's absolutely amazing, but that was custom. Like I gave him the LUT and then I ditched that and I recreated it all custom.
Wow, really?
Because the LUT was like, with Josh Pine, we worked really for that specific look. I had like stacks and we compiled and put it in my curve and then did an output and all that. But then, was able to separate, basically the curve, my beautiful curve I love, to my color, so I had even like both separately. I could just give the color, just give the curve and have them like plug them together. So we could really have control of that look, because it's not an easy look to recreate.
Yeah.
But like on AV, it was funny because like if you've seen my work, generally speaking, although I can be bold, and I can have some sort of contrast, I'm not very stretch.
You're not like aggressive.
I'm very open. Like the looks are quite, so they can be darkness, but I'm not very high contrast. I'm not a high con type of, generally speaking. So yeah, we build shadow in Book of Eli, but you could, if you really look, like you'll see through like, like a big, nice soft curve all the way to the deep end. So you can kind of see the roll off of the shadow. And with AV, it was like, we went for it. And I was like, even me, I was like, so I would just add and add. We would add incrementally. And eventually, like, you learn to love the aesthetic and you can embrace it. But like for a little moment there, I was like, oh, I think I'm a little outside of my comfort zone, but let's go for it. So like and that's fun. Like to just get pushed and explore, and, you have to. And I'm very lucky to have creative that will trust me to venture and to push the envelope, and
that's so cool. That's so cool. Okay, so I have a question for you. If you're thinking about, like you just gave us so many good insights about film emulation and about this sort of like nostalgia or idealization we tend to have when we say, oh, I want a filmic look, or I want to do an emulation. Most of the time, what we mean is not, I want a 1-to-1, that contrast curve, that level of grain, that color gamut. We want the best of that, or what we remember most fondly of that, and probably through the lens of, like a TV master or whatever. But so if you have a client walk into tomorrow, if I walk in tomorrow and I say, hey, I want you to grade my movie and I want to do a really filmic thing, I want to do a film emulation, what does that mean to you? What do you do with that when that kind of direction comes into you?
Well, I mean, first of like, there's so many different film emulation. We had different stock at the time. Yeah. What kind of stock are we talking about? What kind of chemical bath, like process, like a straightforward ENR, like what, there's so many variables, and like what movies you have in mind, right? That evoke that film era that you like. Is it like a Deep Shadow? Is it like what is it? The girl that talked with the hat? She, they're trying to make her like a good woman. Audrey Hepburn, she talk as much as I do.
My Fair Lady.
My Fair Lady. Yeah. Like, what are we talking about?
Feel like that.
Like, what is it that like, are we talking 3-strip? Are we like? There's a lot of different era of films, so that's the first thing. Maybe have some. I think like back in the day, they had good still photography that you can actually, more than having access to that print or like remembering from like the restoration, TV or home video version that have been made of it. Like there's some good still photography that can like be more faithful sometimes. That's the way smart. They would do it back then, because they would also chemically develop those stills, and so like sometimes you can have access to that kind of thing. And I will sometimes show, obviously, if I have a library a lot, but a lot of time like it's very rare that people want something like a very, very further era, or at least it's like a hybrid of that. They kind of want the deep shadow or these, these kind of colors, or, skew colors, because you didn't have like pure like green or
pure reds
blue,
or whatever.
Like a little bit the dirty whites or whatever. So it's like I said, it's often more so like a hybrid, and then I develop, and like as we go, it's my job, right, to translate and capture it and like just deliver, But yeah, so it's kind of not a one answer, because you really have to have a feel for what it is that they want. I also like, I laugh a lot because a lot of time, people want, like right now, like it's almost a trend, like the grain. Everyone wants grain, right. grain. And sometimes there's grain. I'm like, it looks like digital noise. I mean, come on, it doesn't look like grain. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
That is not like how grain, like.
It's not how it interacts.
I don't care what tool you're using, it ain't grain, like it looks like digital noise.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you look at something from Nolan and you can barely see the grain.
He's
like the line, when we were still on film, it was like, oh, less grain.
Get rid of it. Yeah.
Everybody like wanted like the most clean, pristine, no grain. And then like the nostalgia kicked in after like a few years of having these clean images, and all of a sudden like wanting the grain. So if you're gonna do grain, try to do grain like the real way, which for me, it's like scanning like the stock that you want and you have in mind. And, there was a weird thing with grain where sometimes like the speed felt a little off, almost like not off, but what I'm saying? Like there was like sort of a weird speed feel towards the image, or like there was like all sorts of like almost like that now you would say as technical weirdness, right? Or like how like it
Yes.
would like but it also was absorbed like everywhere, like in a lot of like what's more difficult to capture nowadays, or when people use plugins for grain, is that it's hard to see it in your mids and your highlights and your lows. You tend to see it mostly in a range, like a specific range. And even I struggle with that, even with my scan grain and blend it and comp it on top, and like and I go like depending of like like I follow the speed of the image, obviously I don't go
Right.
like but sometimes you might let's say you might skew it by like 5 frame, just a little like off. It's not much, but it's just
Yes.
enough to give it like a weird dynamic, that like registers a little bit more. You have to cheat the brain basically. So there's all sorts of like nice trick you can do, and how you map it into like the different RGB channel, like if you comp it,
Yes.
so that you can like at least get more texture in all each of the channel, like a little bit like when you get VFX mats, and you would just kind of layer it in the each channel. So there's different tricks, but it makes me laugh because all the latest print, all the last things we would go to the theater, and it would be like so clean.
Yeah. And now we want the filth back.
So like really like, and then and then it's like like if you want to like a really old print kind of look, and then you have to go crazy, and most people are not really willing to go there unless they
Right.
shoot it this way. Like I did like a cute little the Silver Lake Cleaners, which is a student. Was it student? No, it was Woman in Film, sponsored by Google, short film, and shot on film, and has all the grit and the texture, and then you can really tell. Like there's nothing beats it. Like if you go get an old stock and you get the grain from that, I mean, there is no digital cheat you can do that's gonna successfully give you that real thing.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And I mean, I feel like this conversation about emulation and really everything that you've shared with us today, the one thing that I always find in common, no matter who it is, whenever I talk to a really, really good colorist, is your attention to detail is just crazy. And it's been so cool just listening to you talk about the details that matter to you and the lengths you're willing to go to get them right. Like we're having such a fun and informal conversation today, but I can tell when it's go time for you, you are all in on those details and you won't compromise on them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but I really care. I'm very passionate. That's why, that's why I was telling you, like, I don't want to get jaded, or I don't want to lose that passion. So like, I'll have to get out before that happens,
Yeah.
And I still want to be, it takes a long time. I mean, you would know that too. I'm guessing it takes a long time. Like I got here in 2006, and to build my name, to even feel like, I still don't feel like I'm top, you know what I'm saying? Like there's so much big names out there, but like, I mean, I did make my mark, and I up there, like, but it takes a while. And then, and I don't know if you, with anything, right? Arts in general, because you're an artist as well, and you do like all sorts of, do you color on Baselight now, or?
No, I'm on a Resolve now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like doing coloring and directing and, being in the art form, but like, there's always this sort of, you're as good as your last show, or as good as your last work. And, I can never take it for granted. So it's like, it's so competitive. It's, it's difficult to just stay on top and get the project, and you're like, oh, but I just did this and it was fantastic. Why? Where's my next one? And then when you're busy, you're like, oh my God, when am I going to be with my family? So the balance is a little tricky. But I just feel like you have to know, I want to do this for as long as I can, but not to the cost of like, if, I think there is a time where you need to be aware if, you cannot fulfill the same way, right? If you don't, the passion is not there, if you're jaded, or if you depend too much on others and take the credit, or like, I don't want to be that person. Or if like, your site or things that, I test my eye color, like the grading thing, like every year to make sure like,
Wow.
It's good, because although color is very subjective, I still need to be able to treat it objectively, knowing that subjectively you might have to do things sometimes in order to flow and to make things work because of the way it was shot. But, objectively, you need to know that you can still see all your different, shades of color. So yeah, I mean, I still have the passion and the love. So that's why the details and all that, I'm super hard on myself. So it's okay if you criticize any of my work, because I'm the worst critic
You've
of my
already done
work.
it.
But, and so are, any creative person really, unless you have like this, I don't know, other type of personality that might not be like that. But like, I feel like I can always push further and all that. And once that's stopped, then I will go, do other things, right? So I don't know when that will be. But.
Well, you've had an amazing run through like such a crazy number of like periods and moments in our history, and you clearly are as passionate and as like dug into what you're doing and loving it as ever. So I'm just glad we get to steal you for a couple hours and download some of your brain. Thanks for giving us your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Watch the Continental. I'm just kidding. Oh, no, I'm just kidding.
Thank you very much, Maxine.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. All right. Let's cut.
He gets so serious after. You're like, he's all like, he lights up, right? And then he's like, I'm very serious after. It's like, big smile. And okay, we're done.
We're done here.
Get out.